But the most unlikely take on house was to be the result of its collision with rock and roll.
Kids from Salford formed a band, and the fact that they were to change history, I don't think people are conscious that they're going to do that. I don't think Elvis Presley was conscious he was going to do what he was going to do. You know, he just did what he did, and they just did what they did.
Formed in Manchester in the mid-80s, the Happy Mondays started life as a typical indie rock band.
At the time, in Little Houghton, which is part, you know, like an overspill of Salford, they built the most used, gigantic superstar, right, called Scan. It sold everything from the sports goods, you know, to guitars, to amplifiers, to records, to food, right? But basically, they had it set up like a fucking greengrocer's. A mirror there, and fucking 20 old ditties on the till. We used to go shopping with our mum and dad, right, and we purposely put our fishtail parkas on. Darts down there, they'd sold air guns down in your lining. They had these country and western amps in, right, which was fucked. And you could literally get away with carrying these things out.
But it was during the recording of their second album, Bummed, that the Mondays started to absorb the twin influences of house music and ecstasy.
20 or 30 of our friends had come down to this little club. So we gave the DJ some new records to play, right? Put a pill down his neck, and we're all dancing like this and having a great time. And then there's all these squaddies, and all looking like that. What's your fucking mate looking at, and why are you dancing like that? You taking the piss? So me and another pal of ours, I won't mention his name, said to this guy, look, just put one of them in your mouth, and in an hour's time, right, just trust us, in an hour's time, you'll enjoy yourself, and there'll be no fighting, and you'll be dancing like us. He ends up scrounging like about 30 pills for all his squaddy mates. So 2 hours later, we've got all these squaddies in this thing doing this, you know, and dancing and going, saying, this is the best thing, I don't want to go back in the army and all that lot.
So there we are in Driffield, and I drove over there, but in between that and finding all these squaddies looking for the Mondays in the local pub, I finally find the studio in this courtyard and go in the recording room, and there's Martin Hannett recording a wonderful rock track, God knows which one. And then I go across the courtyard to what is normally where musicians play pool and hang out and drink coffee and get bored. And all I could hear was coming out of this space, and there was no lights on. I remember opening the door, and it was pitch dark, and stumbling over bodies and lots of black vinyl. And across the way, they were recording this rock album, but in this room, they were all lying on the floor, out of their heads, just playing this weird, obscure, American imported house music.
To put a house beat into their indie rock, the Mondays brought a DJ into the studio.
Rope for Luck was just the way I approach that mix is what works on the dance floor. None of us really knew how it was going to turn out. I knew what I wanted. I knew that the rhythms in rock records never worked. So it had to be more rhythmic, especially the bottom end. So it was all about changing the B line and the drums. So basically we took a loop from NWA, looped it up, got Ryder's vocals up and worked on a groove, and it went from there.
Well, what he brought to it, right, was he brought that sort of trance to it. Do you know what I mean? Where, you know, you didn't have to, well, the boom, you know, you could give it all that and things, you know what I mean? And even do cartwheels and things, you know, and things like that. He brought that smooth mellowness, everything to it, all the right ingredients.
When you've got the trust that Sean and the boys gave us, and the vision that we had, it just worked. It wasn't something you sat down and tried to work out why it worked. There was a vibe, and the vibe was a good vibe.
And plus, we didn't have a clue. You know, if you'd have shown me a mixing desk, then, you know, I'd have thought you cut sheet metal on it.
Think about the future, the future.
The Mondays led an explosion in indie dance music and took house to a whole new audience.
Think about the future, the future.
And I'm quoting the Daily Telegraph here. The drummer and bass player of the Mondays changed British music by adapting the house rhythms of Chicago to British rock, punk, indie or whatever. They were the synthesizers. They were the people who inadvertently put all this shit together.